Hello, World Wide Web. Welcome back to the Hangin' With Web Show. I'm GW Pomichter. Thank you so much for logging on and tuning in. If you haven't done it yet, go on down and hit subscribe for us so you can come back over and over again and find some fantastic, fun creators of all kinds, gamers, you name it, we've got it here. And we are here at Recon 2017 in Orlando, Florida at the Park in Radisson, hosted by the Historical Miniatures Gaming Society South.
Yes, sir.
They tried to trip my tongue up with that. I got him. And we are here hanging with Chip Coffey, a game master for the game The Case of the Tumultuous Temple. Chip, thanks for hanging with us, man.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, tell us about this game. The Case of the Tumultuous Temple.
If you're familiar with Indiana Jones.
Yes, sir.
It's very much based on that. In fact, Indiana Jones is one of our main characters in the game.
Okay.
For the term is pulp gaming.
Oh.
Pulp was the whole idea of pulp. It came about during the 1930s.
Yes, sir.
And they were magazines that were printed every month on the cheapest paper they could find. Hence the title Pulp. But they had some of the most outrageous characters of the time. Later on, when Spielberg and decided to do Indiana Jones, he took from that idea and created this Indiana Jones character, which has introduced a whole new generation to what the concept of pulp was all about.
Oh, absolutely. I think creatively, pulp was designed to be made literally, as business majors today would say, cheaper, better, faster.
Absolutely.
We could get it out for a nickel. We could get it to every single kid. And we'd have the most outrageous, crazy, imaginative stories.
Oh, absolutely.
And then, of course, like all pop culture phenomenon, it gets pricier and pricier and pricier until now the real core audience disappears. And then it takes something like Indiana Jones, like Star Wars, to reintroduce serialized stories, to reintroduce pulp fiction into the life of the average consumer again.
Exactly, and what you're talking about is a lot of the things that make things, such as Indiana Jones and Star Wars work, is what they used to call the old serials. I don't know if you've seen Flash Gordon serials.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Things like those and of course back then, people didn't have TV sets, so they would go to the theater, and every week you would have another episode of a serial.
Well, you know, a lot of our modern audience now on the web, we read this a lot on blogs and things like that, where a lot of our modern audience today think that, they say, well, gee, sequels have gone too far. And I don't think they realize that before television, before weekly long format storytelling, the way to tell a long format story was through a serial, through a series of sequels, one after the other after the other. And people would show up every week, or they'd show up every month, or they'd show up as often as the filmmakers could get them out to see that long format story. And then one day we shoved it in their living room and we forgot that was how movies were made. Okay, so now, Case of the Tumultuous Temple. What's the premise of just the basic story to get you a game player started?
Well, what we have done with this one takes place in an imaginary place called China Station. China Station is somewhere on the coast of China.
Okay.
And it's filled with all your wonderful characters. It's got, and you have Indiana Jones, with another very famous pulp character called Doc Savage. Okay. Doc Savage was also known as the Man of Bronze. And in modern days, everybody recognizes him because his shirt is never fully intact. He's got rippling muscles. He's not Superman, but he's supposed to be the epitome of what man is.
I was going to say the character name isn't ringing a bell to me personally, but I believe I remember seeing sort of a history of Pulp Fiction documentary not long ago where they showed different art drawings and things like that, and that was one of the character drawings that they used, particularly in the design of Indiana Jones, to try to, here's this guy, and of course then they doctorized him. So that they could.
The interesting thing about Doc Savage is that he was created by a man called Lester Dent, And you were talking about how they would crank these stories out. They had to write one of these stories. You know, they were writing a full novel. I mean, these things are like a 200-page book that was printed every month. And Lester Dent was famous because apparently he would type so fast that at some point keys would come flying off of the typewriter. You know, but you know he.
So all of my authors out there who are complaining about with NaNoWriMo for November, remember that some storytellers back in the day had to do that every month from start to finish.
And of course he's not in our storyline, but one of the most famous of all pulp figures is The Shadow.
Absolutely.
By a guy by the name of Walter Gibson. Walter Gibson became incredibly wealthy as a result of doing The Shadow, and he actually owned his own train that he could use to get around. So he had his train car, and he could do that sort of thing.
And if you're a pop culture follower, The Shadow was made even more famous when Orson Welles took it on the radio and
Absolutely.
Adapted it.
What a wonderful voice to begin with.
Oh my good! And to take that voice and apply it to the darker pulp fiction stories from The Shadow was just phenomenal.
And he was too. The Shadow was not. He wasn't like Doc Savage, where Doc Savage used mercy bullets, which would knock you out but wouldn't kill you. The Shadow killed you. You know.
The Shadow was Batman before Batman.
Absolutely. Well, Dark Knight.
Dark Knight before Batman.
Yes.
That's right. Okay. So, what are the basic rules? The basic rules of the game?
Okay. We actually run a very freewheeling game, and one of the things that we always tell our gamers before we start is we do have rules, and I'll get into some of the specifics of it in a bit. But one of the things we like is we go. We're not worried. We don't want ultra-competitive people in our games. Mm-hmm. We want people that are there just for freewheeling, having fun. So we say, look, this isn't about winning or losing. It's about having a good time. The only requirement is at the end, the good guys always win, the bad guys always lose, but the bad guy always survives so they can be around for the next episode, which is going to be when the next convention is held.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
In the vein of, I think, modern gaming, particularly miniatures gaming.
Sure.
Modern gaming obviously owes a lot to the mid-'70s, late '70s introduction of the world to Dungeons and Dragons.
Absolutely.
And storytelling gaming. Because that's really what it is. It's modern storytelling. It's group storytelling. The game table has become the new campfire. Mm-hmm. And so you guys are telling a story. Every time your gamers sit down, they're creating an entirely new story within your universe.
And one of the things we like to do is we like to play on that by, if something happens in this scenario today, when I come back in September, we'll follow on from that scenario.
Oh, that is fantastic. So you create the story with each game, and it adapts.
Right.
I think actually in television and in modern video gaming, a few years ago there was a Sci-Fi Channel show called Defiant that did that. They wrote the first season and the first story, and then they also put out a video game at the same time. And they took elements of gamers who played online, those stories that were created for the next seasons of the show. They would pick up characters and pick up story pieces from that. It was an amazing way to involve the fandom and the players and the people who are, they're our bread and butter. I mean, let's face it, whether you're designing games or doing web media or television or storytelling of any kind, that's your bread and butter, the fans and the people who play. And it's an amazing way to do that. And then so these players will come back to the next convention and see some of their stories.
Well, I've actually gotten to the point now where over the years of doing this, and I've done this now for pushing 20 years, this particular genre of gaming, I have found I have a lot of regulars now that have the same character, and they run that same character, so they're very much into their persona. There's a lot of RPG in any gaming. I don't care what kind of game you're playing, but there's a pretty good amount in the type we do. One other thing we do that I think we have a lot of fun with is if one of the main characters is supposedly killed, if they can come up with some outrageous way that they survived it, we call that the cliffhanger rule. They're back to life. They come
Very nice.
So if they're blown up in a building with no escape, if they can tell me some way that they could have gotten out of that.
Some miraculous, I hid under a cat or something, right?
Exactly.
That's pretty cool, man. That is really cool. So if you're playing one of Chip's games, you might come back in the sequel.
Oh, you will come back in the sequel.
That's fantastic.
Unless you just don't do anything at all. Say, I have no idea. I don't think I could possibly have survived it. I'd say, okay, too bad, we'll put him back in the box and you won't see him again. But most people come up with, like you said, they hide under the cat.
Now, where are you coming to next? Where are you going to be next with the game?
Well,
I know, we know you're here this weekend. Where are you going to be up the road?
Well, I'm from Jacksonville.
Okay.
And so, we do about 4 conventions a year.
Okay.
And the next one is going to be here. It's going to be at Hurricane. And then the one after that will be in Jacksonville at RapierCon, which occurs second weekend of February.
Okay, fantastic. We're going to put some links down below to those gaming conventions so that y'all can find Chip up the road in Case of the Tumultuous Temple and other fantastic games in here.
Oh,
there's some amazing work.
I am always stunned every time I get here with the talent. I use an expression that we're very similar to the people that are model train guys. And that they put on, to them it's all about the minutia. If we can get the most amazing detail, and if you look at our games, that's what makes it work for us. If somebody comes by and goes, "Can I take a picture?"
Oh man, that's amazing. Isn't
my
it?
day is made.
And then if they sit down and they play the game and they have a great time, then it's it's a twofer. We have to wrap it up. As we do, we want to thank our friends over at Something Unique Magazine, the Florida Book News, Wordfire Press, Space Coast Comics, and Famous Faces and Funnies for sharing these amazing creative people all over the World Wide Web for us. I'm GW Pomichter. We've been hanging with Chip Coffey. Just like the drink, only spelled different.
There you go.
All right. Remember, folks, subscribe, log on, tune in, and see who we're hanging with next.